we've got X in the company bank account. We need to do something with it.
Obviously not the only person that thinks that way on where should I put my money,
It's a common question. It's a common good first question.
It's great doing this podcast episode so we can get it out there and try and guide people in the right way on how to take the first steps in doing that.
We looked at a great tool a couple of weeks ago which is published through Experian. Obviously Experian know everything about you. Everything.
With people ranting on Facebook groups saying that sales prices have gone down and all of that sort of stuff, might come straight in to put a dampener on what he's
black
saying
and white
and come up with the stats. They're the facts.
Right, Andy, it's me and you again today.
I know.
Mr. Macbeth's been turfed out again due to lack of knowledge and enthusiasm for the podcast. So it's the two stalwarts are back. And your topic that you've chosen this week is it's a bit of a Phil and Kirsty location.
Yeah.
Identifying and investing in up-and-coming areas.
Yeah.
So, different factors on how to research an area. And I spoke to a potential investor actually referred by our accountant earlier this week. And he's got a certain amount of money in his company bank account. And he just said, Mike, I don't know what to do with the money in my bank account. It sounds like a terrible problem.
I was going to say, I wish I had that problem.
Yeah, we've got X in the company bank account. We need to do something with it. And I want to invest in property. I just don't know what, where, why and how. So I gave him kind of my take on the world of the three options of being super safe and investing within a couple of miles of his own front door into buy-to-let properties that a Mr. and Mrs. Jones would rent from a long term, a medium risk of learning and researching something out of area that potentially has a higher return or lower prices and higher returns where he can play a bit of Monopoly, maybe up north with the amount of cash that he did have to invest, or the higher risk, higher reward, higher hassle of HMO students and care type properties that we've investigated in previous podcasts. But one of the topics of conversation around locations was identifying and investing in up and coming areas. So this one indirectly is for you, Mr. X, who I spoke to earlier this week.
Yeah.
I'll send it over to him on WhatsApp.
Yeah, I think he's obviously not the only person that thinks that way on where should I put my money.
It's a common question. It's a common good first question.
Exactly. It's great doing this podcast episode so we can get it out there and try and guide people in the right way on how to take the first steps in doing that and try and make it easier for them rather than them not sort of knowing the foundations of what to look for, how to look for it, and why invest in that area really. So it's good to chat about it.
So we've privately written our own bullet points to see if we agree or disagree.
Yes.
Whether there's a method or just madness in how to do this. So there's 3 points. There's how to research a market, factors to consider in emerging markets, and doing your due diligence and looking at risk. Yeah. So research. My first tip as such on my bullet points is start on Rightmove, but with Rightmove, because everybody starts on Rightmove.
Yeah.
Okay. It is the way it is. There's an estate agency movement to get rid of Rightmove and this, that, and the other. But the fact is, the public love Rightmove, so the agents will just generally always be there, or the vast majority will be. But within Rightmove, what you can do if you're a Google Chrome user, and if you're not a Google Chrome user, you're mad.
They are out there.
We're not going to get along. Google Chrome extensions are awesome things where people write their own programs, publish them almost like apps, and you can use them within Google, and it actually drives so much more data. So I use a Google Chrome extension called Patma, P-A-T-M-A, in Rightmove, which shows me all of the property history when it was originally listed, whether it's been reduced, whether the property's fallen through, so I can see the history of a property. So if I'm looking at a certain house, rather than it just being that's the price, I get that's the price, that was the previous price, that was the price before the price, was when it was made available, unavailable, all those sorts of things. So I get a much more educated view than an estate agent will probably tell me if I ring them up and ask them about it. So that's my first tip. Look on Rightmove and use a Google Chrome extension rather than using the Rightmove app.
Yep, I had that as one of my
Awesome.
bullet points as well. But I use different one called Property Market Intel. So again, it's an extension to Chrome. And what this does, it gives you so much data on average rents in that area, within that postcode area, average house prices, HMO Article 4s, whether it's in that part or not. So yeah, I mean, data on the right hand side, it just makes you have a better decision, more informed decision when you've got all of that intel.
Good
there.
one for landlords then, if there's planning
Absolutely.
situations on it.
Good one for landlords, and that's what I use to advise landlords on potential investments that they want to make, because it's there, it's correct data as well, and you don't really get that anywhere.
No.
Other than these specialised sort of property market intel, or the one that you use as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely get it added on. It's an absolute game changer if you're looking to invest in property. I also had things like land registry checks as well.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I've put land registry checks on there is because I remember watching a webinar. I can't remember who it was now, but it was a webinar on how to identify investments. And if a property's been on the market for a long time, which again on Rightmove you can filter it on
Newest
sort
to
of
oldest,
list,
oldest to
newest to
yeah.
oldest. So if a property's been on there for a long time, then it might be worth doing a land registry check to reach out to the owner of that property directly. Now, not land registry check is not land registry is not always correct with the correct address on there, but you never know, you might write to that owner of that property and go to them directly to try and do a deal directly with the owner of that property. So again, it's just another useful addition to have to try and approach owners of properties that aren't getting success with agents, and see if a deal can be done directly with them.
I've got a research tip which is based on location. It's my 50-50 rule for properties that are for sale and under offer. So you can judge a market. So if you say, oh, I'm looking for a property, I've got 150k to invest, you're not going to buy one obviously in Berkshire. You're gonna head west, or you're going to head north. And if you start looking at towns that you've never been to, and you type in Lincoln, and I can't advise you on Lincoln because I've never been there either. Look how many properties are for sale, and then tick the under offer box and see how many are under offer. By a general rule of thumb, a very general rule of thumb, if there's more than 50% of properties under offer, then the market's a pretty healthy place. If there's less, if there's 2,000 for sale and only 500 sold, it's a very, very difficult market. And you can do one of two things with that. You can say, oh, it's a bit of a grotty market, I'm going to stay away. Or you can use that to your advantage when negotiating a price, because if there's loads more for sale than there are under offer, then it's a buyer's market.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense. The other point that I've got on research market, so it's about local estate agents. Okay, so if you start building up relationships with local estate agents in their local area, they should know what's going on in that area, what investment is coming into the area, whether they're going to regenerate the town centre or other aspects as well, whether there's new housing developments going in there. So create the relationship with the local estate agent so they can advise you of any things that come up in that area, so you can get in there first rather than later, and you get the jump start on things. So because the local estate agent's knowledge is going to be far superior to anyone else's that doesn't live there, right, or it doesn't invest in that area. So yeah, definitely to just get connections with the estate agents, make sure that they keep you informed of any developments, and then like I said, you can get in there sooner rather than later than anyone else.
Okay, I've got one more point on research, which is look at the competition. And again, this is going back to portal-based research, is looking at how many properties there are to let. So if you're going to view a 2-bedroom flat in a certain town, just go on to Rightmove, to let, 2 bedrooms, apartment. And if there's 300 2-bedroom apartments all available, again, you need to bear in mind that there's high levels of competition for what you're thinking of buying. The market may be flooded. We talk on this podcast all the time about there being a real lack of supply of good rentals, but that doesn't cover the entire UK. Every town, every suburb has its own microclimate, which all it takes is an institutional investor to buy up a block and you can flood a small town of apartments, for example, which makes it very difficult for a one-off investor who just needs their mortgage covering, because they have to reduce their price, they have to do things about it, they have to act. So very simple searches of, okay, I'm going to view a 2-bedroom flat in Ruislip tomorrow. Go on Rightmove, properties to let, Ruislip, 2-bedroom flat, see what your competition is. Don't go with what the agent says it will rent for, because the person who's selling it to you is selling it to you. They'll give you the record amount, or in some cases, I'll wink now because one of our partners rings me every other week and says, Mike, how much is this going to rent for? I've told them 1,600, and he's 5 years behind the mark, because that was the last time he worked in property rentals. We have a good chuckle about it. Then he calls the client back and tells them it's 2,200. So get your own research done on, okay, well, I'm going to view in this building, look at how many properties are rented in that building and look at the rents that they've gone for.
And that's something that I always say to landlords or property investors, is do your own research rather than relying on an agent. Because if it was an investment, if it was my investment, I would want to know for sure that I've done my own research, that the figures that I'm getting are correct, and that's what I've seen on the market, and I've got the comparables there as well. So yeah, great tip on actually doing your own research and making sure that you're getting everything correct. The last one that I've got is looking at economic factors. Okay, so you're a big sort of geek on Office and National Statistics.
I'll do what I
can. And sort of looking at that tells you sort of about employment rates, projects, population growth, all of that sort of stuff. So if you're thinking about investing in a certain area, then go onto the ONS website, type that place in or specific postcode, and just have a look at what's going on in that area. Is it a younger generation? Because if it's a younger generation, then they might have certain needs, different needs compared to an older renter. So you've just got to make sure that you fit in with that demographic, and that you're buying the right property to suit, you know, that renter's needs in there. It also tells you sort of how much of that population within that area currently rents.
Yep.
So again, if it's a high rental area, I was looking at Brighton earlier on, and they had the biggest percentage of renters compared to homeowners. I think there was about 38% of the population rent. So that'd be a great area to get a rental property in Brighton. So yeah, just have a look at all of those different types of things. Make sure that it meets the criteria that you want as an investor, and yeah, that will again make you give a better decision on whether that's the right investment.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at an area or location that isn't too well known to you, we looked at a great tool a couple of weeks ago, which is published through Experian. Obviously, Experian know everything about you. Everything.
They do. I've seen it.
They know everything about everyone, and we could type a postcode in, so that takes you down to basically one side of the road or one building, and it will tell you the likely age of the occupier, what that person does, how much that person earns, how many children that person's got, how many holidays they go on, what type of holiday they go on, whether they buy their food online or whether they buy their food in the shops. Incredible amount of detail. So if you're buying a certain type of property for a certain type of person, you can check it against this Experian tool, which just said, well, this is the demographic that live there. So like you say, you can match your purchase with the type of tenants that you want to attract quite easily just by doing that research. And if it's way out, you know, then you might want to think again.
Might want to consider it. Okay, so moving on to factors to consider in emerging markets then. So one thing that has to be looked at is economic growth in that area. So we're talking about job creations, new business developments, and economic growth. So we've said it before on previous episodes of the podcast that, you know, if you get the big corporates going in there,
Yep.
and they're having their HQ there, which is creating more jobs in that local area, you get house builders going in there building more new homes. They only do that for one reason, these house builders, by the way. They've got access to people's salaries, ages, whether you're family or not, etc., etc. So they wouldn't do any decision without it being correct for them, where it's going to increase the popularity of that area. So you've got to have a look at, you know, news articles, sign up to newsletters about developer news, get yourself on forums on social media, get yourself on Facebook groups where you're going to get all of this information. And as soon as you hear that Microsoft are moving their HQ to Birmingham,
Yeah.
then it's like, right, okay, well, that's going to increase the job creation in there. There's going to be more money spent in that area, and income for that area. And again, with house building, you know, as soon as you get wind of 10,000 homes being built in, you know, Peterborough near the city centre, near the town centre, then it's okay, well, something big's going to happen there. You know, if you look at a 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bedroom property around that, whilst the building's going on, once the building's complete, then your property value should increase as well. So again, getting that information sent to you on a day, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, just so you can see what's happening in different areas, because there's a lot going on at the moment. We're hearing about, you know, new homes being built in different areas, regeneration projects going into town centres and cities, better transport links being created as well. So there's a lot to keep on top of. But if you do, then it could just be the thing that you need to make a great investment.
Yeah. The biggest myth economically, I think, is that build more houses to bring house prices down or to stabilise house prices.
It just doesn't
it's the
happen.
biggest load of rubbish anyone has ever... I don't know who sort of spread that as a narrative to say, well, we need to build a certain amount of houses a year to control house prices. It's absolute garbage. Wherever you see new homes built, house prices increase further. Where I live is an example of that. I used to live in an area called Warfield, which was a 1990s development. They then gave an enormous patch to develop around about a 1,000 additional houses, which pretty much doubles the size of the area. And they were selling those new builds, 3-bedroom terraces, for the same price a second-hand, as such, 3-bedroom detached house with a garage was selling for. So all that served to do was to pull up the prices of the existing houses, because developers will build for profit and maximise their profit. They won't just build 1,000 houses, then release them onto the market, flood the market and have to sell them off at a discount. No, it's not how it works. A developer will do their best to increase prices and sell at the absolute maximum, which is why you see housing developments take 10 and 12 years to totally execute. So yeah, anywhere where you see a lot of houses being built, it is not a bad sign. It is not going to mean your own house price is going to fall as a result. It's just going to bring wealthier people, or people who are willing to borrow more money, into the area. A younger, more mobile population when new builds are built. So yeah, that's my rant of the day, I think, is that theory.
We've said it so many times before, and I still hear friends and other people outside of work still talk about, I don't want to invest in there because they're building all of these houses there. It's like, well, no, you want to invest in there.
Yeah.
Because they're not, those house builders are not doing it for no reason. They see the profitability there. And if anything, like you've just said, it's gonna push up house prices, if anything, because there's more going on.
Yeah.
It looks better as well, the area.
Diversity of employment, I think, when you look at emerging markets, is really, really important. Quite often, people will buy a property in a town because the town is cheap, and then realise there's only one employer there. So if that employer leaves, you are up a creek without a paddle, where I've just taken a word out of that phrase. So the former mining towns, which a lot of them have now turned into call centre towns or warehousing towns, is a risky place to invest your money. High risk, high reward, granted. You'll probably get a much better return on a month-to-month basis than you would in a town where the diversity of employers is massive, like the Thames Valley. So it's expensive to buy into the Thames Valley because economically it's pretty bulletproof.
Yeah.
2008 recession came and went with a gust of a wind down the A329, M4, M3 corridor because people were walking out of one job with a redundancy package and starting a new job that Monday a little bit better off.
Yeah.
And I was working at that point, so I got very, very good knowledge of it. Whereas other towns were absolutely destroyed by it because if they're, for example, a car plant town or a steel making town or financial services town, well, they were affected. Everything stopped. And it could have happened in COVID as well, but obviously there was massive amounts of government support. So I would research those emerging towns and say, have they suddenly gone into a bubble because Rolls-Royce have turned up with an engine building factory?
Yeah.
How long's that engine building factory likely to be there? What's the contract? So places like Nissan, quite often they'll give 10-year contracts to factories. Okay, well, how quickly am I looking to get in and out of this? And does that fit with my my plans, or does that leave me at a risk? Because in 10 years' time, they might stop building that electric engine and move out again, because it does happen. Car plants and factories and this, that and the other aren't there forever. They're quite often there on the back of a government grant, and then when that grant goes, they'll take the next government grant and go to Slovakia.
Yeah, I suppose it just depends how established those businesses are. So if you look at, I don't know, let's take Honda for example in Bracknell. I mean, they've been there how long? Years and years and years, haven't they?
Yeah, with different levels, but they've also been in Slough. They shut their massive factory in Swindon, and all sorts of different things. But that office has been there for as long as I can remember.
If you've got established businesses like that, where it's sort of a HQ type office, then they don't tend to move very often. It's their manufacturing side of things and all of that sort of stuff that tends to move. So again, have a look at the established businesses. Have you got a Microsoft? Have you got TaylorMade? Have you got Honda? Or have you got big companies like that? Because if you do, then it's pretty sort of secure that they're going to stay that's the
diversity
10 years.
Is if there's 5 within a local area, well, if one goes, then there's 4 to support the local population. Exactly. If there's one,
then
you're at a limb with that. You're being supported by that one business. A great example of small places with big employers is Shirebrook. I think it's in Derbyshire.
Never heard of it.
90% of the population are employed by Sports Direct.
Really?
It's a small village, and the Sports Direct warehouse is bigger than the village. Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's an old mining town, so they built the distribution centre you can see from space.
Huge, isn't it? Yeah.
And the vast majority of people who live in that town are employed at that place. Now, if Mike Ashley, who's blows hot and cold.
Yeah, you don't know what type of character you're going to get.
If he has a disagreement with the local council, what's to say he doesn't just pick up and shift to the next county?
Yeah.
Because he fancies it rather than it being a good business decision. He's a very good businessman by all accounts, but blows hot and cold by reputation.
We are talking big businesses here, right? Yeah. So they're going to potentially put the business first rather than anything else, potentially.
Never know.
So they potentially could go. One other thing that I've got on my emerging markets is sort of rental yields compared to capital growth. So looking at high rental yield areas, looking at the long-term capital appreciation, and again, the way of doing that is looking on the ONS website, having a look how much house prices have gone up in the last 12 months, the rental yield stuff that you can get from, Rightmove, Zoopla, all of that sort of stuff that sort of breaks down the areas and the yields in those areas as well. You've just got to make sure that you're getting good rental yields, good capital growth year on year. And then if that's all adding up, then again, it's a good investment decision because everything is going up, and it has done for the last 5 years or 6 years, whatever term that you want to look over. So yeah, again, just have a look at that. And I know I keep going on about it, but the ONS website, I mean, that's sort of factually correct, isn't it? That's the statistics, and you've used that before with people ranting on Facebook groups saying that sales prices have gone down and all of that sort of stuff. Might come straight in to sort of put a dampener on what he's
black
saying
and white
and come up with the stats. They're the facts. So yeah, it's a great website to use, and not many people use that. Every investor that I speak to never mention that they've looked on the ONS website, and then when they do, they love it because you've got all the information there. So yeah, check that out, and check Rightmove and Zoopla out for rental yields as well.
Right, risk and due diligence. I've got about 5 things written down, and off camera you just said this was going to be a quick one, so we'll see. Now, I'm going to well, you've actually solved one of my problems, or one of my due diligence risk and
that's good.
points, which is council planning restrictions. If you've got the right Google Chrome plugins, you're going to see if there's planning restrictions on having a HMO or a rental property.
Yeah.
So that was one I was going to say, is someone might flog you a HMO where you can't have a HMO.
Yeah.
Could happen easily.
Can happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually seen that before. A few years ago, actually, when the landlord bought, I think it was a 3-bed property, looking to turn it into a 5-bed, but it wasn't a HMO. And actually, we had a landlord that bought a property as a HMO. It was already set up as a HMO, but they didn't have a license to run it as a HMO. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, again,
the world used to be buyer beware. It's not anymore. No. It is an estate agent's duty to tell you reasons why you might not want to buy a property, whether that be down to, someone died in this house and you might be, you might be a bit creeped out about it, to actual restrictions on it. But I don't believe that's particularly well enforced, and I don't trust the estate agent, being an estate agent.
Yeah.
To do that for me. So I would also always do my diligence. So your Google Chrome plugin trumps mine on the basis that those planning restrictions are often shown. 3 of mine is just talk to estate agents. And I just said I don't trust estate agents. Talk in local Facebook groups and talk to local conveyancers, because a local conveyancer will always be able to tell you if there is a problem with a particular street, a particular development or block of apartments or whatever, whereas a national conveyancer will never have that kind of knowledge. So if you can get in front of or make friends with a local conveyancer, they're a fountain of knowledge. Whilst people love to bash conveyancers, there's so much knowledge about whether roads have been adopted or whatever it might be that they've got for you. What's on your list?
Similar thing, but the only other point that I had is about exit strategies. So
that's my last one.
Oh, is it? There you go. Beat you to it. But
you had to punch your title on as how to get out.
How to get out, straight to the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, just be clear on your goals. So property investing is not a cheap thing to get into,
and it's not liquid.
And it's not liquid. So you've got to be clear on what your goals are as a property investor, whether it's short term, long term, whether it's a house flip that you want to do property investing for. And like I said, sell it straight away. Whether you've got a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 20-year goal, because this is going to make your decision better for you as an individual. Because if it's long term that you're looking for, then you know that your decision will be based on looking at house price over the last 10 years, looking at rental demand over the last couple of years, etc., etc. So you can gain an understanding of you knowing that you're going to hold on to that property for the next 10 years, and you can set yourself up correctly. If it's something that you're looking at short term, well, there's no point looking at the long-term averages of house prices or anything like that, because it's never going to be anything similar compared to a 10-year goal. If it's a house flip, then obviously you need to look at, the Rightmove or Zoopla or other houses that are sold recently in good condition and the condition that you want to get yours into. That will give you the goal there. But yeah, you've just got to be clear on your goals, because the amount of clients that I've spoken to, I'm sure you've spoken to as well, Mike, they don't have any idea on what their goals and their future is. They've got a bit of money. They think, yeah, I'll go and get a buy to let, I'll rent it out. Then 2 years later, they come to me and say, yeah, I want to sell it now. Okay, we've made no money on it.
No, unlikely
to make any money on it. So, and then when you tell them that, they're disappointed because they thought that was the right thing to do, but it's not. You've got to have just a clear path, your clear goals in place, and if you have that, then again, it makes you make better informed decisions on that.
Yeah, I had it written down when I was talking about how to get out. I caveated that with who are your buyers, and see if you agree with me. Who wants to pay the least for a property?
Who wants to pay the least?
Yeah, what group of buyers wants to pay the least? Who wants to get the best deal?
Well, I'd say, are we talking about landlords, investors?
Exactly.
I feel like you would.
It wasn't a trick question. You thought you could get tricked.
I did have it in my head.
Who's likely to pay the most for a property?
Well, people that are going to live there long term.
So, if you buy a property, you have to look at who you're going to sell it to. An investor typically wants to buy low and sell high, which is a very, very difficult trick to do. So if you buy a property, turn it into an investment property, and then look to sell it on to an investor, don't be shocked when that investor wants a deal off you, because they're emotionless about it. It's purely based on the numbers. Will this property work for me or won't it work for me? It brought me back to a podcast, or a few podcasts we've done with Peter Licorinas, who sorts out HMO and care style living for people, but he carefully buys properties in residential area, detached residential properties that he converts into HMOs, that when his investor then wants to exit, he brings them back to turn them back into family homes, because he knows a family will be far more emotional about buying a property and less numbers driven, because they have different needs, different goals of needing to be in a property by the time school catchment times come round, needing to be in a property because their family are around the corner, needing, not wanting, and therefore willing to pay a premium. So who are you going to sell it to? If you're just going to buy a HMO in HMOville in the town and leave it as a HMO, well, your buyer is a HMO buyer who's going to want a discount. Not someone who's going to pay absolute premium. So again, going back to your point, a lot of people buy to-lets, buy investment properties because they have some spare cash. Totally get that. Just like a lot of people start businesses because they don't like their employer, and they don't have an end planned when they start. So it's just like doing this. It's just like starting a business. Start the business with the end in sight. Why am I doing it? If I'm going to hold this for 40 years and use it as a pension, brilliant. If I'm going to do this for 10 years and then exit, or 5 years then exit, how are you going to exit? Who are you going to exit to? And buy those properties with the buyer in mind. Perfect place to end.
Makes sense.
Because that's the end of the investment journey. So I'm not going to ask this week about politics, because YouTube keep banning all of our promoted ads. So thanks for listening this week. We'll catch you again next Friday.